Next we have Henri Doreau. All right. Henri is a filmmaker from France. It's a hobby that he and I both share. He's a Lustre administrator and developer at CEA. He works on various aspects of Lustre, mostly HSM internals and ecosystem, namely Robinhood Policy and Copy Tool. He discovered that unlinking the .lustre directory works and that you should not do it. That's LU2858. Ladies and gentlemen, Henri Doreau, thank you.
Hello, everyone. So this talk is about Robinhood V3, which was released last year. And as you will see, for those of you who don't know it, it's a significant change in comparison to Robinhood version 2.5, which is probably the most widely deployed version. So a bit of history about the project. It all started in 2005 and has been constantly developed since then. I believe it's now widely used in HPC centers, both very large and much smaller ones. And the contributors base is constantly expanding with other sites, other vendors, etc. It's been developed for our needs. We are a public research institution in France, and we open sourced it in 2009. You can find it on GitHub if you're interested in having a look at the internals. From the very beginning, it was able to do many things for us. So managing temporary file systems, driving HSM installations, reporting information about the file system, and providing administrators with handy companion tools, which I will describe later. So here are those tools. So for those of you who use version 2, you probably know the ones that are on top of the slides. Everything has been unified with the version 3 rewrite. So Robinhood is the core daemon, and you have other tools like RBH report, which is able to give you tons of information about what's going on the file system, how are users using Lustre, or clones of standard Unix tools such as DU or find that hit the database instead of hitting the file system. The core idea of the tool is the core concept is to aggregate information about the file system, put everything into a database, either by scanning the file system or reading the Lustre changelogs. If you use it on a non-Lustre file system, you can simply scan periodically, and it should work as well. But the tool has been significantly optimized for Lustre. On top of that, administrators can define custom policies to schedule various actions massively on the file system entries. So some were built in with version 2. It's now very generic. There are still some that are provided by the tool by default, but it's much easier to implement new ones than it was before. This is pretty much the same thing, but as a picture. So as the file system is the input, either when you scan it. So Robinhood has a parallel scanning engine. You can even distribute it if you use partial scans, subdirectory scanning, or it can read the changelogs on Lustre version 2. those entries enter a processing pipeline where Robinhood will enrich them by doing stats, retrieving HSM information, whatever you need for your policies, and ingest that into the database. This database can be used by fine and DU clones, as I said before. It's of course extremely handy to be able to do a big DU or fine over a SQL database without impacting your production, and potentially much faster than if you run it on the file system. It can provide you with statistics, and the primary purpose of the tool is to implement policies. It's a policy engine. The reason why we are replicating, because this is what Robinhood does, the reason why we are replicating metadata into a SQL database is that POSIX file systems are not really well suited for the kind of access that one need to apply policies. They are good for data, but when you want to aggregate, do some complex criteria searches, databases are just fantastic. This is Robinhood V3. So as you can see here, the core has been made very generic. It only consists in entry processing, core policy scheduling, but everything, all actions, all triggers, all, we call them status managers. They are the state machines that are associated to each entry in a managed file system, are now plugins. They are dynamic libraries that can be developed separately, shipped separately, and Robinhood will load them automatically depending on the configuration, only what it needs. This allows you to build any conceivable workflow. Before V3, there used to be built-in hard-coded, let's say, policies. There were, of course, it was of course possible to give them parameters, but Robinhood it was difficult to do other things than purging files, migrating files, removing files on directories with meanings that depended on the flavor of Robinhood that you had. For instance, if you used Robinhood as a temporary file system manager, the purge policies meant the removal of the older files. With the Lustre HSM flavor of Robinhood, the same purge policy meant the release in the HSM sense of those files. So, and the big problem with that is that it was also not possible to have one instance doing both HSM and temporary file system management. This is all gone with Robinhood V3. Everything's now generic. There is only a single package, and all policies are configurable and can run together on a unique instance if you need. So this is an example of the Robinhood V3 configuration. No Polish notation. You declare the policy and the rules to tell the engine how to apply the policy. So this simple example will migrate files between Lustre OST pools by executing LFS migrate-p the pool and applying a very simple status manager, OK or unmanaged, which is what the basic status manager does. And you can see two file classes, the big HPC files and the movie types. So file classes is something that has been in Robinhood for numerous versions now. You specify criteria on paths, subdirectories, anything that suits your needs. And Robinhood will apply the rules according to those expressions. RBH report is, of course, a very useful tool for administrators. It can report activity about the file system itself, about Robinhood itself, or about users in particular, about the file classes you have. It's extremely versatile. And with Robinhood V3, you can add custom criteria. You can add custom statistics, aggregated statistics. And I think there was this contribution by Cray to enhance the reporting tools with a custom printf option. So you can really create very complex. You can create very complex reports on top of Robinhood. In this case, I print the archive ID, which is a field that is managed by the Lustre HSM module, along with the path of a field for all entries that are released. This is what the command at the bottom does. Version 3 also comes with a new web interface. You may know the former one. It was really old. This one has been entirely rewritten with the notion of users and roles, fine-grained authentication, and a REST interface with different formats. Oh, sorry for the layout. Well, this is here for reference anyway. It is now possible to query the web interface using REST API. But the big thing, is this notion of plugins. So I will show you a couple plugins that have been implemented by us or community contributed plugins. And I will show you what's in a plugin, how simple it is to extend Robinhood to make it do whatever you want it to do. One of the first plugins that was developed besides the former policies is a checker. So it runs checksums or checksumming. Actually, any command, but the first purpose was to compute checksums of all the files and check whether there have been corruption or not. If you run MD5 on files periodically, you can make sure that the output of the command is unchanged. If you want to figure out what is being stored on your file system, you can run the file utility and observe the output. You know, this command will read the header of your file to determine what's in there. A second one is called ModeGuard. It's been contributed by Stanford Research Computing. It makes sure that certain files that match criteria have the right permissions, the right mode. So you have two parameters in the policy, a set mask and a clear mask. And you can use it to force user directories to be set GIDs or remove executables, prevent users from storing executable files in the file system. But again, the scope of the policy is fully configuration driven. The implementation is very generic. It just handles those two parameters, clears and set, and applies it on the entries that match your criteria. So plugins are shared object libraries. This makes it very easy to distribute them. I don't know if vendors want to enrich their solution. This may be a way to do so. They are loaded on demand according using this convention that you have seen before, where in the configuration, the prefix of an action, the prefix of a status manager indicates what shared library, what module should be loaded. They are then cached by the application. They remain in memory, and they expose a couple functions. The first two ones are obvious, and the last ones are optional. They allow the module to expose either a status manager, an action like copy a file, unlink a file, HSM release a file, and schedulers. I will show you what schedulers are in a couple of minutes. So if you want to write a policy plugin, the first thing you have to do is to pick a name. Usually it's the hard part. Then to define the parameters of your module, I was talking about the mode guard plugin before. So the set mask and the clear mask are the two parameters of this module. Define a status manager. This is optional, but if you need a custom state machine associated to the entries that will be managed by your plugin, this is where you should do it. So it's an enum and a couple of functions to allow Robinhood to operate the state machine, and define the exposed actions. So I was mentioning examples before, like HSM archive, unlink, remove dir, etc. There are a couple examples in the SRC modules directory of Robinhood on GitHub if you want to have a look. So a couple information about what we are doing at the moment, where we are going. So the next release will be 3.1. 3.0 has been in the wild for a while now. So we are working on version 3.1, and one of the big problems we had is the regulation of the pace of actions that are emitted by Robinhood. Typically, on a Lustre HSM instance deployment, Robinhood is likely to generate lots and lots of archive requests and overload the coordinator, which is the component that handles the HSM request on the MDS. There is currently no feedback mechanism from the coordinator to Robinhood. So a solution was to instruct Robinhood to add a mechanism to Robinhood to make it to slow it down when the coordinator is full. Or a second example is archiving into rate-limited systems. If you want to send files to the cloud, for instance, you may be limited to 3, 4, 5, 10 requests per second. So typically, you will want to interleave the archival of big files with smaller ones to maximize this rate and the throughput. So the solution is schedulers. They are stackable, as you can see here. Robinhood has this 3 steps process. First, it will pre-check the entries. What I call pre-check is a revalidation of the attribute. Either no validation can be done if you trust your database. It can use the cached information. It can decide, so revalidate only the ones that are used by the policy, or it can do a full revalidation, so systematically restat and get HSM info from the file system. Then we'll transmit the entry to scheduler number 1. That will decide whether the entry should be processed now or delayed, or if everything should abort. Scheduler 2, etc. And a post-check is just like the pre-check, because the schedulers, of course, may significantly delay the processing of the entries. Post-check can be done. The schedulers are also implemented as plugins, which allows administrators to parameterize them if they need. They are stackable, and every function, every stage can decide whether to take the entry, skip it, pause the processing, abort everything. This is a short list of what you can expect in Robinhood 3.1. So for the first half of 2017, it's getting short, but I'm confident. So there will be fixes from the 3.0 version. There are a couple ones. The schedulers, there are two ones. The first one is a token filter rate limiter. The second one has per run limitation, so on volumes. For instance, you may want to archive no more than 1 terabyte per run or something like this. There will be new policy plugins. So ModeGuard is the one which I presented before. Deferred Purge is another community contributed plugin. It's been designed. It is aimed at temporary file systems, and instead of removing the older files, it will tag them, set a special flag, so that you can tell your users that their files will be deleted in 1 week, 1 month, and the actual removal of the files happens only on the ones that have this flag set. There will be numerous performance improvements, and there's still ongoing work on the user interface. For the version after, so version 3.2, we are working on asynchronous stat of entries. We are deferring the processing, the retrieval of some of the attributes of the files so as to increase the ingest rate and the performance in general. And we are working on asynchronous accounting. We want the administrators to be able to store more information on the database without putting too much pressure on the system. So this asynchronous accounting idea should give the possibility to offload this accounting management to a second server. I have a picture for that. So on the upper part of the slide, you can see how things are done currently. So the entry table is updated, and in the same transaction, the accounting table where the aggregated statistics are is updated as well. It's a MySQL trigger, so it lives only in a single transaction, and under the same big locks, which limits the scalability and efficiency of the solution. Now, with asynchronous accounting, what we store within a single transaction into the main database engine is, of course, the update of the entries. And also, we push an increment descriptor into a queue that is basically blockless. And this queue can be processed by synklets, so either Robinhood threads or different processes running on different machines. That will generate the updated accounting information either into the MySQL database or into a different database if need be. Usually, accounting is something that's expensive. If you have performance issues, that's often something that helps. Disabling accounting can reduce the load. We are not only working on Robinhood, but also on Lustre for the good of Robinhood. We have done different work. these are a couple examples. So we have recently replaced the vulnerable Cook subsystem by a character device. So instead of being able to read up to 100,000 changelogs per second, Robinhood or any changelog reader can now read order of magnitude more. This has landed into 10, so it will be available soon. There is a patch to improve the handling of HSM requests on the coordinator side. This is, we targeted to 10. It will probably be delayed a bit, maybe to 10.1. The idea here is to prioritize interactive requests so that your restore requests are not stuck behind a huge file of a huge amount of archive requests, for instance. If a user is waiting, you give his request a higher priority. And there is this work by Cray, which is tracked under LU5969 to rework the Lustre API a bit. There are numerous places where performance improvements can be done. Typically avoid the continuous opening and closing of the file system root and the .luster subdirectories to do I/O controls. So as soon as this will be ready, we hope that we can use it to improve the performance of Robinhood. And depending on what your position is, there are numerous things that you can do to help Robinhood and to have Robinhood suit your needs. If you're a system administrator, you can try the B3. We have got very positive feedback about it, and we would be very happy to have more. Even negative feedback is extremely useful, so let us know. There are mailing lists. You can write us directly. You can come and talk to us. We would love to hear about the limitations you face, about the kind of features you would like to have, about your workflow, everything. If you're a developer, you can implement new plugins and grow your fan club. You can help us experimenting with alternative database management systems or sharding. At the moment, this is one of the big work. I think some people are working on it already, but the more the better. And yeah, if you provide Lustre solutions, maybe you want to consider the added value of solution-specific plugins. This can be very helpful for your customers and for you, I guess. So this is it. Thank you for your attention. Do we have time for questions?
Maybe one or two.
Are there questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.